It's hard to believe how far the Marvel Cinematic Universe has come since the original Iron Man movie premiered all the way back in April 2008. Since Iron Man kicked things off, the MCU has grown into one of the biggest media franchises of the planet. With nearly 24 entries in the franchise, record-breaking box office numbers, and a die-hard fan base, there's no denying Marvel films have single-handedly changed the entire movie landscape. Leading that charge is the hero who started it all, Iron Man. It's obvious to even casual Marvel fans that Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark isn't the same person he was when this franchise kicked off. He's had more character development than maybe any other character in the series, and this video will analyze how he's grown and predict what's in store for him in the upcoming Avengers Endgame. We don't see much of Tony Stark before he's kidnapped and secretly builds the Iron Man suit, but it's pretty heavily implied that his moral fiber is a lot weaker than his Iron Man armor. In the beginning of the movie, Tony Stark is a billionaire genius who's content with coasting off the success of his father's company and enjoying his lavish lifestyle. He has the ability and resources to solve a lot of the world's problems, but chooses not to. He is happy just to enjoy vast wealth and is so uninvolved with Stark Industries that he doesn't even know that they're selling weapons to some less than savory people. The early passing of his parents has clearly influenced a lot of Tony Stark's behavior at this point in his life. It's easy to imagine how he might justify his reckless behavior by trying to pack more into his life than his parents could. His brash attitude and disregard for social norms may also stem from his parents not being around him to ingrain him with such rules. If they had lived long enough to instill more values in him, Tony Stark probably would have hit up a hospital instead of Burger King after escaping from a terrorist cell. Following his return to the States, Tony feels a deep sense of guilt for the harm his company has done without him realizing it. He tries to shut down the weapons manufacturing division of Stark Industries, but receives immense pushback from the company's board of directors and his father's business partner, Obadiah Stane. Seeing no other means to undo the harm he accidentally inflicted on the world, Tony Stark builds the improved Iron Man armor in his personal laboratory and uses it to defeat the terrorist organizations who were using his weapons. Tony Stark's character development in the first film essentially centers on him realizing the damage he's unintentionally done to countless innocent people and taking responsibility for his actions. He becomes Iron Man as a way to atone for his negligence and make the world a safer place. In this film, Tony grows and learns that his incredible intellect and vast fortune gives him an obligation to try to improve society in whatever way he can.
I just finally know what I have to do.
Iron Man 2 sees him struggling with his identity as a hero and the burden it places on him. The arc reactor in his chest that keeps him alive and powers the Iron Man suit is literally poisoning him, and he's under pressure from the US government to hand over his superhero technology. As he becomes increasingly resigned to his impending death, Tony Stark grows more reckless as he fights Whiplash, the son of a scientist his father betrayed. This movie has Tony confronting what exactly it means to be a hero and having so much pressure placed on him. He confronts his father's increasingly mixed legacy and learns that he needs to be a symbol of justice as well as someone who fights for it. In this movie, Tony commits to personally bringing about the change he wants to see in the world, as he can't trust people beyond his close friends to uphold his ideals. This circle of friends expands during the events of the first Avengers film. Here, he and other Marvel heroes learn to set aside their pride and work together to protect the Earth from Loki and an alien invasion. In the events of this film, Tony accepts that saving the world is not his sole responsibility, although he ends up solely saving the world, unironically. The events of the first Avengers movie would go on to haunt Tony, though, with the stress of the battle giving him frequent anxiety attacks at the beginning of Iron Man 3. He struggles with the fact that he can't protect humanity from all the threats it faces by himself, and spends most of his time alone building new Iron Man suits. Which sounds like a pretty fun hobby, but maybe not the healthiest one.
I'm the best.
By the end of this film, Tony Stark accepts that there is only so much he as a single person can do for the world as Iron Man. He destroys his army of robots, committing to improving society as both Iron Man and Tony Stark. Essentially, he's found a work-life balance and begins to work toward fixing the world as Tony Stark, rather than addressing problems as they come in his Iron Man persona. This goes well until the events of Avengers Age of Ultron, where Tony's peacekeeping artificial intelligence goes rogue and ends up destroying countless lives. This forces Tony to confront the unintended consequences of his actions once again.
Stand down!
And acknowledge that he can harm people even in his efforts to protect them. The rise of Ultron is utterly devastating to Stark as he finds himself once again accidentally hurting people, making all of his efforts as Iron Man seem pointless. Tony Stark's growing distaste for the power he wields heavily influences actions in Captain America: Civil War. Here, he fights Chris Evans' Captain America and heavily advocates for the Sokovia Awards, which would rein in the activities of superheroes. In this movie, Tony Stark holds an opinion that is entirely different from his views in the second Iron Man film. He actively wants to relinquish some of his power, as he feels that he will only end up doing harm if he's allowed to act on his own. This mindset is a big part of the reason why Stark takes on a kind of mentor role to Tom Holland's Peter Parker in Spider-Man: Homecoming. Seeing Parker's strong sense of morals and knowing that the young hero will stop him if he ever causes more problems, Stark helps Parker become a hero.
And if you died, I feel like that's on me.
In this film, we clearly see that Tony Stark is ready to pass on the knowledge he gained from his victories and failures as Iron Man and trust Peter to be better than him. That's why Peter Parker's death is so deeply upsetting to him in Avengers: Infinity War. He thought that helping Peter Parker become Spider-Man would be the best thing for the teenager, and that he had finally found a way to make the world a better place without accidentally screwing it up. Instead, Peter is dead, and all of Tony Stark's efforts prove to be for nothing. He may even blame himself for Peter's death, even if it was going to happen regardless of him trying to stop it. Going into Avengers Endgame, Tony Stark is the lowest he's ever been, with half the universe and some of the people closest to him dead. He's also a shadow of who he was when he premiered in the MCU. Instead of a selfish billionaire turning a blind eye to the problems he's causing, he's a hero who hates himself for not being as good or as capable as he wants to be. Quite a stark contrast. He only ever seems to do as much harm as he does good, and is both infuriated and depressed by his own weakness and failure. Tony Stark's emotional journey as Iron Man is a staple of the superhero genre, but it's never been told quite as well or across as many terrific pieces of media. Plenty of superhero stories involve the main character confronting the fact that they can only do so much for the world, or that their actions may hurt the people they're trying to help. For instance, in the Superman vs. the Elite animated feature, which is based on the comic What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way, Superman has to defend his ideology against a group of morally ambiguous heroes. They rightfully point out that Superman's refusal to kill or directly change society only leads to extended cycles of harm. Superman defeats them, of course, and in the process demonstrates that his ideology may sometimes hurt people, but inspires others to be better people. Likewise, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies see Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker confront the responsibilities his power entail in the first film. In the second, he figures out exactly what those responsibilities entail, and in the third film, he learns that the little bit of good he can do is better than sacrificing his integrity for more power. The original Spider-Man trilogy and the Iron Man trilogy are actually pretty similar in both their structure and themes. But that's a topic for a different video. Tony Stark's character development after becoming Iron Man is typical for a lot of superheroes, but this is the first time character arc has been so thoroughly explored in a film before. Tony Stark's highs as Iron Man are greater than any other superhero on film, and his lows are completely devastating. Never before have superhero audience seen a character struggle as much and fail at trying to be better than we have with Tony Stark. In his tireless efforts to make the world a better, safer place, he keeps putting the world in even greater danger. This is heartbreaking for both the audience and the character himself. He can't win no matter what he does. If he stops being Iron Man, he'll be no better than when he started this journey. If he continues being a hero, he will inevitably, directly or indirectly, cause innocent people to suffer. Tony Stark may be a much better person than when he was at the beginning of the first Iron Man movie, but he's also in agony. He thought he could use his unique talents and privilege to improve the world, but barely seems to make an impact. Maybe at some point Tony Stark will realize that his efforts alone already make the world a better place than he can possibly imagine. But for now, he's left to ruminate his life choices while drifting through space. After growing so much as a character and the current standing of the universe after Avengers Infinity War, it seems increasingly likely that Tony Stark will sacrifice himself in some way to bring back half of all life in the universe. More than anything else, Tony Stark wants to do something that's unequivocally good with his life. Forfeiting his life so that his friends and loved ones can return is about as selfless as a good deed can get. This would be the redemption that he thinks he needs, and the only way for him to leave the burden of being Iron Man behind without reverting to who he was before he built his first suit. There are also some subtle hints that point to Tony Stark being the person to restore the universe. He has a lasting injury on his left arm from his exploits as Iron Man, and the injury symbolizes how much of a strain his life of a superhero is placing on him. The Infinity Gauntlet, the most obvious means to restore those lost in the snap, just so happens to fit on a person's left hand. Since using the power of the Infinity Gauntlet would likely kill him, a lot of signs are pointing to Iron Man sacrificing his life to use the gauntlet to undo the snap. Tony is also the only one of the original Avengers to be on his own at the start of Endgame. With all of the other heroes on Earth, this could be foreshadowing that Stark's fate is much different and darker than that of his peers. Even if he's almost guaranteed to meet up with the other Avengers and sort out his beef with Captain America, Stark is by far in the most dire situation out of any of the surviving characters at the start of the upcoming film. Tony Stark's character development across his many appearances in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is both inspiring and tragic.
I am Iron Man.
As time goes on, he learns how to be a better hero and gains a solid understanding of what it means to be a hero. However, as his ambition for helping humanity grows, so does the harm he accidentally inflicts on society. This guilt haunts Tony Stark and leaves him wanting to do more for the world, but also fearful of what other damage he might indirectly cause. This kind of growth is at the core of a lot of superhero movies, and is sure to end with him realizing that the efforts always had value, and his time as Iron Man inspired countless people to strive to be heroes themselves. That realization may come at the cost of his life, though, as it seems like Tony Stark will exit the MCU in one way or another in the next film. Sacrificing his life for his loved ones would truly be a hero's death and a fitting end to the character who started this heroic franchise. To see the end to Iron Man's sensational character arc, you'll have to see Avengers Endgame this April. Be prepared, though, as the conclusion to Tony Stark's story is sure to be as emotional as it is climactic.
Just do it!
What are your thoughts on Tony Stark's character development? Is there something we missed, or do you think his story will end in a different way? Please let us know in the comments down below. While you're there, please be sure to like this video and subscribe to Behind the Screen. We have even more videos about the many heroic and villainous characters in the MCU coming soon, and they're all guaranteed to be amazing, incredible, spectacular, or whatever other superhero adjective you prefer.